What's good, King Ganda? It's your boy O'Shea Duke Jackson, back at it again with another collaboration here on the channel. Make sure that you brothers and sisters like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notification. And today I'm here with one of my good brothers. I'll do my best, as he would say, to approximate the pronunciation of his last name, Ike Ogiamia. I think that's it. The best I could do.
That's pretty damn good, sir.
You know what? Let me do
How
my
you doing,
little
O'Shea?
intro. What? I'm doing pretty good, man. I do thank you for coming on. Let people know a little bit about who is Brother Ike. You know, why is he dressed so nice and got the church mic on, but you know, in the nice room in the back. Who are you? And you know, for those who don't know who you are.
Well, I am the guy talking to you right now on this very channel with O'Shea Duke Jackson that's about to break down this very important topic. However, I'm also an engineer. I have a YouTube channel. I am a musician. In my YouTube channel, for example, if we took that particular strain there, I like to talk about how to be better and do better with a strong emphasis on doing. That means I keep things measurable, actionable, intuitive, right? Simple. And what are the things that we're doing? What are the things we're trying to get better at? Everything from mastery of ourselves, mastery of our subjective consciousness, being able to master our feelings, our image in our head, the talk in our head, that kind of a thing, so that we can be the observer, all the way through to being a better communicator, influencer, seller, so on and so forth. And all the practical things that need to be done in order to achieve these. In other words, these are the values that I have and the virtues that are required for pursuit of these values. So again, engineer, musician, YouTuber, amongst other things, but definitely glad to be here today with O'Shea at the King Ganda channel.
Well, again, we thank you for coming, and congratulations, you just got married. You're currently in Ghana, so congratulations. And we can put the applause effect for the editors to do that. You're a really intelligent man from our collaborations we did on my other channel. And I wanted to do a collab when you're on your way to Ethiopia. I know tomorrow, and
Yes.
So we, you know, me, I'm always tied up in as well as you. But I wanted to talk about this because even though this is Kinganda and it does focus on more of what's in Uganda and sometimes Kenya, we do have people from all across the diaspora that watch this, mainly from the American Black diaspora, including Nigerians, whoever else may be. And the topic I wanted to weigh in on you with was how can the Nigerian community unite or work with the African American community? And the reason why I'm asking is because you have a pretty good idea of how both operate, right?
I think I do, yes.
You think you do? Let's talk about you, because you came to the United States. You're Nigerian man, and you came to the United States. To talk about your story so we can kind of, before we get into it.
Yeah, so I'm Nigerian, born and raised for the first 17 and a half years of my life. And then I came to the United States in about 2000, where I've spent the last about 20 years of my life. So to your point, I do have experience on both sides of the fence, if you will. I came over when I won the visa lottery, right? Straight out of high school. I came alone over here, started out in New York and then went to California, studied engineering and so on and so forth. Long story short, now I have my engineering company, amongst other things. But I do have a wide range of experience when it comes to these two different cultures, yes.
Let's talk about this because, you know, I recently started going to Africa in 2017, but I do remember, because I was a biology major, and of course, you know, if you don't have African American students in those courses, you will have a lot of you know, African students and Caribbean students. So that was more or less my first interaction with people that were from West Africa that were living in America. And when I talked to some of those people, there was somewhat of a feeling that they felt like they were being rejected by the African American community. They felt like they got made fun of. And so for as they progressed later on in life, they felt like it was better for them to hang out with people of other races, or even, you know, in their own communities, and kind of like not deal with, you know, African. Obviously, some people were able to just be like, okay, we understand that y'all are just joking or whatever, but it's not that serious. But what was your personal experience dealing with African Americans once you first came to the United States, and also what was your perception of African Americans when you lived in Nigeria?
So one of the great exports of America is culture, and some of the elements of which are African American culture. So you have the African American rap music, the dance, the clothing, the slang, so on and so forth, right? The general whole kind of African American persona is is a cultural product, if you will, that is kind of well consumed out there in the world at large. So I had my idea of the African American culture from that kind of exports, right? The music, so on and so forth. And also because of the shared history, right? So you're going to know about the slavery, this, that, and the other. And being from West Africa, we all do have that shared history. And if you can tie, as I can, if you can look back in your family lineage, as I can, then you're going to see at that point when the slave trade was going on, you're going to be able to tell what your family was up to, what they took part in, and so on and so forth. So in terms of my family, with their interaction with the slave trade, and then also with the cultural products, as I put it, that is exported by America, most of which is African American culture, I've kind of was exposed. But when you talk about my view, didn't really have much of it. It was more, I'm more of a very open-minded kind of person, right? In the sense that I know how to eat the meat, spit out the bones, right? And I also know how to put things into many different kinds of categories, right? So I understood that growing up, the whole hood persona, if you will, was more appealing, right? Because as a young man, that's kind of an appealing thing, even though while in Nigeria, you're studying, you're doing your book stuff and so on and so forth. So you just kind of look at this thing as a diversion, right? It is not a goal that you're going after, and you don't really see it as a problem per se, right? Until later on when you start hearing from African Americans themselves that this particular aspect of the culture is perhaps exploited, let's say by Hollywood and music industry and so on and so forth, and also that there's not enough representation of the other sides, as I was talking about, facing your books and getting certain things done. So not only till I came to the United States did I start to see all the nuances and the difficulties. From afar, it was just more of, hey, look at that shiny little thing over here. That could be a nice little diversion in my Walkman headphones while I do other things, that kind of stuff, right?
So what you were seeing initially, like what they show the rest of the world about African Americans is, okay, the entertainment piece and stuff like that. When you came to America, you saw, oh wow, you have a lot of black people that are in business, doing things, studying and stuff like that, which is probably more of them than there are the guys who are running around robbing and shooting people and rapping and wearing bling bling. And you are more of an open-minded person, just in general. I can tell that about yourself. But a lot of people are not like you. And I can even say me, I got caught up in that for some time. With the going back and forth with the Africans in America, and I got caught up in that for some time. But what keeps some of the Nigerians around the world or diaspora, or even that's in America, what keeps some of the division going between the us and the brothers from Nigeria?
Okay, so I'm going to speak now in the way I like to speak, which is in kind of concepts and generalities and so on and so forth, because I think that rather than just talk about anecdotal evidence, my truth, your own little myopic view, let's look at what really is going on. But before I go there, I would like to say that you're saying, how can we come together? And I think that the why is always an important aspect as to the how. So why do we want to come together, right? Is it just because it's all brotherly love and kumbaya and whatnot? Well, that's usually not a very practical, pragmatic reason to do things. It may be fine for you and your cousins or whatever to come together for Thanksgiving, but why should people come together, generally speaking? I would say in this particular regard, let's keep ourselves within the economic frame. You are already seen as a group. In other words, let's say black peoples of the world, right, are already clumped together by other groups, right?
Right.
So exactly. And when you're being competed against, if you will, and none of this has a negative connotation. None of this is I'm a full-blooded capitalistic or competitive type of person. In other words, I have my head right down here in the pragmatic world where it's dog eat dog and stuff happens, and this is not any kind of complaint. What I'm saying is this: you're seen already as a group, okay, and also you're competed by other cohorts of people whom are more unified, if you will, at least within their economic operations, and you're competed against in that particular way. So when you are kind of a ragtag crew of islands and scattered, when you're economically, that is, and you're competing with people whom are more unified, that's going to be a problem, right? So why come together? This is the real practical reason beyond the whole kumbaya stuff, which tends not to move people like myself, right? It moves some people, but it actually doesn't get stuff done. And then the people who doesn't move tend to be people who are getting stuff done anyways. But anyways, let me just say that is the reason why. And then you ask, well, why does that division persist? I think that tribalism is the word, okay? Now, tribalism writ large, tribalism in general is something that we understand. We talk about red versus blue, north versus south within the context of America, for example. And we know that anything can become a tribal issue. You know that you can take, sports teams and so on and so forth, different cities, different street corners, whatever, different gangs, and you can create a tribal issue out of it. But there is a particular strain of tribalism that affects indigenous peoples. And if you think about it for a little bit, it makes sense. Indigenous peoples tend to be very tribalistic because they actually are tribal. Does that kind of make sense to you, what I'm saying there? It's like these are actual tribes. Exactly. They're actual tribes. This is how they come about. They move in small groups. Hence, you would have the different Native Americans or the Aborigines, or let's say Africans, and then by extension African Americans, tend to be rather individualistic people. Okay, they tend to see a lot of difference with people that are not very closely genetically tied to them. Okay, so that is one big issue as to why. And then there is the thing whereby there is this immigrant mentality. Well, let's put it this way. Let's put it more general. The contributions of certain people, let's say, for example, the Nigerians, right, are not going to respect the cultural contributions of the African Americans, right? And I'm broad brushing it right now, okay?
Okay.
And this makes the African Americans kind of feel a certain kind of way. Like, why would you not respect my cultural contributions? Why would you say things like, oh, well, their culture is this or that kind of a thing? This is something that tends to happen. So number one, we're tribal. We don't see ourselves as the same, okay? This, for example, when the African Americans, if you will, went back to Liberia and then they saw the natives over there, the same thing happened, right? Where it's like, these people are not the same as us. Okay, right. So that kind of thing happened. The whole point of me mentioning this is to say that it is a natural outgrowth of tribalistic peoples, rather than just say, oh, it's all hate and the devil, or it's a plot by some sinister cabal of whatever. That may or may not be true, but what is also true is the fact that indigenous people tend to be tribal, and then hence they don't see each other as the same. And then moving forward to the cultural aspects of things, you would have one person, if let's say they have economic prowess, let's say like the Igbos, for example, they take that economic prowess and they use that as a crutch for their insecurity complex, talking about on the African side now, to say, hey, your culture is not whatever, your contributions are less than my contributions, which is bullshit, right? So I would say that this is the case. Number one, tribalistic peoples, because they're indigenous peoples, that's what we are, and hence we don't see sameness. And then number two, there's superiority and inferiority complexes going on, more psychologically subtle things going on both sides.
I could never have answered that like you did. It's an engineering thinking working today. But look, in one of the things I like about you, because in my community, which is the Black manosphere community, it is heavily African American dominated. All the big wigs are African American, and you are a guy that, when you look at your last name, you're like, yo, who is this guy? Like, you know what I mean? Like, this definitely ain't he ain't a Jackson, he ain't a Johnson, he ain't a Peters. But one thing I like about you is, despite being very successful, you fit right in where people don't even. People are just looking at you as just a part of the group. And I noticed. I don't know if anybody else noticed that about you, but for me, I noticed that about you very distinctly, which was this guy is not African American for sure, but he comes in with an open mind and an open attitude to, to give and to receive the same respect he's giving everybody else. Now, one of the things I will say about some of our people, and I'm including the Nigerians because that's where a lot of us come from, or West Africa, and I'm claiming everybody as our people. The brothers that are still on the continent and the people in Black America, we're looking to get respected by other people and complaining about them not respecting us. We have a hard time trying to fit in and try to also respect them. I want you to talk about your success, because obviously you're in business, you have excellent soft skills. How has this enabled you to be able to move not only in around the African American community, but also in the international community? Because you're very receptive to how others do it and just fitting in and adjusting as time goes on.
I think that the ability to be able to focus on what is important, what is salient, what is relevant from time to time is the whole key to cooperating with people, to communicating with people, to influencing people, to getting people to like you in general, right? So if I come into a space, let's say like the Manosphere, the African American Manosphere, and there are a whole bunch of things that are going on that I may have, let's say, a problem with, okay, I don't have to go about trying to, play whack-a-mole, right? Be like, oh, but this and this and this and this and this, yeah, but, right? That kind of a thing. I'm the kind of person where it's like, number one, I think I'm very pragmatic in the sense that I expect human beings to be human beings. I expect communities to be communities. What I mean by that is flawed, right? I expect everything to be flawed. When I come in, I'm not looking for any kind of perfection, right? So whether it be, oh, well, Kevin Samuel said this, how about what he did? I'm like, what are you talking about? Okay. These are the things I am here for. In other words, right? So again, the ability to recognize what is salient, what is relevant, rather than going around trying to play this kind of, I don't want to be pejorative, but it's a strange game, I think, for men especially to be playing. This kind of, let me go nitpicking, right? As Jesus said, take the log out of your eye before you start looking for the speck of dust in someone else's eye. It's like, know what is relevant. So when I come into a community, when I come into a business, when I come into any kind of mode of interaction and so on and so forth, it's like, hey, there's O'Shea. What do I like about O'Shea? What can me and O'Shea work on together, right? And then you hone in on that, you focus on that. Chances are then O'Shea can influence you and you can influence O'Shea in all these other areas that that you may even have disagreements on. But I always focus on what is relevant. What gear can I push? What are the objectives? What is the goal? That's kind of how I would say. And I don't know if am I answering your question?
You're answering it right. I like to actually jump in on that because, for me, coming from certain aspects of the African American community where, just in the Black community, my family had a real, like you said, a pejorative attitude towards, how our people were performing and things like that. And not necessarily focused, and it was always nitpicking the bad parts. But then, we had all of these guys that were doing really great things, and it was never no notification or no notice of those things. And what I like about what you said is, you look for what's salient. A lot of people, I talk about this even on our channel. You're gonna have people. What about this? What about that? I notice people like that are the most unsuccessful. If we really want to be honest. If we want to talk about that and really at the most empirical level, these are the Negroes that are the most unsuccessful. And on this channel, when we talk about bringing Black people together, you nailed it, man. What can we achieve? What can be achieved in our conversation? What can we agree on? Same thing Malcolm X was trying to tell Black people in the 60s. versus, even with, hiring the Kinganda team that operates and edits the videos, that edit this video. I don't care about, well, what tribe are you from? Well, you're Buganda. I can't hire you. Can you do the job? Are you good? Are you talented? Do you want to work? Yes. I don't care where you're from. I'm gonna give you the opportunity.
And yeah,
go ahead.
And I'm sorry. That's why I, in approaching this whole broadcast, right, I started out by saying, well, why do we want to come together? And I brushed aside all the, and I wasn't anticipating that you were going to go this direction when I did this. I'm just saying it's naturally what I do. I brushed aside all the, oh, let's love each other, like each other, kumbaya, whatever. Like, that's not really the point. The point is why, in a practical, pragmatic, and then I say, let's stay within the economic frame. What is it? Okay, well, you're already seen as a group together. You're competing against other groups that do operate as a unit, generally speaking, in terms of their economic movements. And also, we all know that, when you become a unit, then you can better compete in that regard. And that's why I also then went to say, well, why? What is this thing about us that makes it such that we are not that we're tribalistic, right? So rather than go to the whole, blaming, right, of either someone that's tearing you apart or blaming of yourself, right, whipping yourself in the back, just understand it's a natural outgrowth of the kinds of people that you are. You're tribal people, you're indigenous people. This is how it goes. You've never seen yourself as a unit. It's never been the case. So if you understand these kinds of things, and again, to your point, right, these are the ways in which people should move in any kind of sphere at all. Always look at what is salient, what is important, what you're trying to do, the outcomes that you're trying to go after, rather than play this kind of weird, let me find an issue, find a conspiracy, find something to point at with everybody. That takes a lot of energy. It's wasted energy. And as you say, yes, it does not breed success.
One of the things that I like about you, and I'm not going to say these nice things, obviously, ever again, especially on WhatsApp, but Kevin Samuels, which is a good friend of mine, he came out with some details on what he considered a high value person or high value man would be, and that is having something to add to the group was one of them, which is something that I try to do, something that you've tried to do. And it was because of you I was able to go to Dr. Thunder's YouTube channel. I remember I didn't want to do it. I was like, all right, do you want me to do this? He was like, listen, go do it. Just, I would do it for you. I told Dr. Thunder, like I don't even know you. The only reason why I'm doing this is because of Ike. But through that interaction was one of the best moves I made all year. And I want to publicly applaud you for that. Give them an applause sign, editors, for adding that value to my life to introduce me to this brother who has introduced me to other people. And the people that I'm getting in contact with now have so much value. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about a lot of times, because when communities need to come together, and everybody is incentive based or incentive driven in the world. That's one thing that I think a lot of blacks, we have a problem with understanding that people need an incentive to work with you. People need an incentive to need to hang around you. People need incentives to be in relationships. One of the things that you do is you understand that if we're going to bridge the gap, value has to be added.
Yes.
Now, talk about how you do this, because a lot of blacks in on both sides, in Africa, in America, don't understand the value of association, the values of networks, the values of adding things to the table before you ask. And you do that. You call Super Chat Jesus for a reason. So talk about that mindset and why and how you've been able to achieve things like that.
It's interesting because it also dovetails with the topic that we're talking about, which is building a network requires that the nodes in the network be trusted and that they're trusted to bring value, right? So people don't go to, as they should not, African American businesses just because they're African American businesses, or African businesses just because. And as a matter of fact, there is a trust problem, as you know, with these businesses because they've not generally proven themselves to be bringing value, right? And then the problem is, and I'll talk about your question more specifically, but I just want to touch upon how it relates to the topic at hand. The problem is some people start saying things like the whole we should come together and the should and the should and the should, but you talked about incentives, right? Why should I spend my dollars over there when I'm getting crappy service? Ha ha ha, the whole customer service thing, right? And this is not just African American thing, it's an African thing. I'm in Africa, for example.
Oh, yes. Tell the truth.
Time in Africa is just gets wasted.
Tell the truth.
It just gets, and I'm like, oh my God. And you take this particular one, these, and you were just talking as microcosms, as anecdotal individuals going out there experiencing this stuff. You take these things that we experience and then you multiply it across the whole system, and then you're like, wow, this is why there's so much gridlock and stagnation. And this is also why someone like me, for example, I'm not going to call out the businesses that I'm talking about here, but I'm not going to deal with them again. It's like when you're so lackadaisical, is it lackadaisical?
Dragging your feet
with your time. It's ridiculous. And then maybe in the American side, there's the kind of like the old customer service things. Like, why would I want to deal with you? You know, I need my services on time, of a high quality, guaranteed, so on and on and on. Absolutely. When there's somebody right next door that will do it, why shouldn't you? But anyways, that's how I touched upon the topic, and then we can kind of expand upon that later. But for me, knowing about leverage, knowing about incentives, as you say it, is super key. And I know that I call it the seesaw leverage. That's the basic entry level leverage, right? You can always do something for somebody, right? You can always do something for somebody. And it's a seesaw thing where if you do something for somebody, okay, then now they're elevated. They got that potential energy. If you remember our physics class, they can then do something for you. And why I say it's entry level is you don't have, this is amongst peers type leverage. Okay. And now there are many kinds of leverage and many places you can go from this, but just anyone listening to this, just understand that you can always do something for somebody, or you can always ask for something from somebody. For example, you're in a conference, right? Or you're in a conference, well, let's just say conference, or you're the new person in the office, you're the new person in the classroom. Look around and ask somebody for a pen. Ask somebody for, in other words, something small that you know they have that they can give you that now becomes the first step on that seesaw thing, and then you can give them back something. Now there's already two interactions of a positive sort between you guys, and then it just continues. You move to the neighborhood, ask your neighbor for the garden hose. In other words, you already saw the garden hose, you know they're not using it, you know it's reasonable to ask for a garden hose, ask for the garden hose. And guess what? People actually feel good. They just picture yourself. O'Shea, I come in and ask you for a garden hose. Don't you feel good giving that to me? You're like, yeah, I'm the big man on the block. I got a garden hose. He doesn't have a garden hose. I'm helping him. You get what I'm saying, right? You're like, I feel useful. I feel good today. I gave somebody something. As they say, it is blessed to give, right? So this kind of what I call seesaw type of leverage thing is very basic. It's simple. It's the entry level. You can do it amongst peers. And again, it also dovetails with the whole thing about bringing value. And that's something that I think that we should perhaps continue to talk about, because it goes to how we can connect. Because the reason I talk about the lack of sameness, right? Because we're tribalistic. Hence, we're not going to see ourselves as the same. Hence, you're going to have that whole crab in the bucket thing. Because if your brother is one of the crabs coming out of the bucket, you're not going to pull him down. Because you know that if he comes out of the bucket, he's going to tip the bucket over, and we're all going to be free, right? You just picture it's your brother, it's your father. You'll be like, yeah, let him out. I know he's going to help us. But when you don't see this person as the same as you, that's when it's going to be a problem, right? It's going to be a problem. So we don't have that sameness. Hence, we don't have the trust. You see, let's say you're talking about within a particular tribe, or let's say within the Nigerian community. Let's take that big group now. Since one big thing that culture does is a shorthand for trust, and trust is a lubricant for interactions. In other words, right? So it's like, there's an Igbo guy. I know I can trust him for certain things. After a couple of conversations, I can be like, okay, cool. I know how they generally operate. He's from this part of Nigeria, from this family, blah, blah, blah. In other words, there's a lot of shorthand, efficient communication that's going on. The reason why people don't bridge the gap is because I don't know not the language, but I don't know how to play the trust game over on that side, right? How do I know that this business is blah, blah, blah? So I think that to the point of solutions, having vetted nodes, in other words, you're like, let's say Wodemaya, for example, I know that he knows all kinds of people, right?
Oh,
and if Wodemaya recommends,
definitely.
Wodemaya recommends an accountant to you, you know, okay, this is going to be a legit accountant, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's been vetted by Wodemaya, right? That kind of thing. So that's that whole shorthand thing. So you don't have to think about So it's that family thing, and I like to bring it down to the family, the culture, so on and so forth. So you ask your uncle, because he's your uncle, and you know your uncle, that recommend to me a caterer. They recommend a caterer. You don't have to question too much. It makes the transaction efficient. It makes the trust is the lubricant. Okay, culture serves that purpose. Now that we're trying to bridge the gap between these two peoples, there are ways of just think about simple social network, right? Whereby, let's say like Yelp or something like that, where you have a network that's established. The people whom establish vet these people. In other words, I'm not going to put O'Shea as this business provider unless it's my name on the line. In other words, it's my name on the line. I'm going to say that O'Shea is good for this, this, and this, right? And then also the consumers also get to shall we say, what's the review, right? They do the reviews and that kind of a thing. So, and you don't let anyone in. It's not just say, hey, kumbaya, oh, well, black business stuff, like patronize black business, hashtag black business. Like, yeah, come on, right? I need service. I need product. I need good delivery. I need quality. You get what I'm saying? It's not a black thing. So, however, since we know that we want to come together as a group, because we're already seen as a group, and it's best to operate in that fashion, but we also know that a chain, if you will, a network is only as good as its weakest node, right? Then we want to create this network and have vetted nodes in there, so that when I look around and I want to operate, I want to go across, oh, the Igbos are good at this kind of trade, and as African American, I want to do something with these guys, right? So I just go to this network thing, boom, it's there. I know that the people whom have created this site or whatever it may be have their names on the line, and I can see the reviews. This is a 5-star gentleman when it comes to this kind of business. Boom, I get it done. Hence, you're now doing that kind of lubricant, having that lubricant effect which trust brings to the table, which tends to be a cultural thing. That's how you can create a culture, a meta culture, if you will. I know I'm going on and whatnot, but
no, you're dropping a lot of knowledge, man. And that's one of the things that I've noticed is I was stuck in Uganda for 11 months, and everything that you're saying as far as if I want to make friends with somebody, how can I do that so they can do the same thing for me? I'll give you an example of a guy that's in the beginning, I tipped the scale for him, which was Kevin Samuels, and he's tipping the scale for me all the time now, right? And it just nice. Come back, and I mean, every month, just responding to his videos, man, I'm able to do thousands of dollars, and nice. I'm able to, it's a whole economy now on social media just talking about what Kevin Samuels said, and he's been a great guy, man, allowing us to do that as He came up. He allowed, like, okay, now it's time to let everybody else. I'm blowing up. It's okay for everybody else to benefit off of what we do, and we thank him for that. Every time you do a Kevin Samuels video, you're going to get at least $300, $400, right? You know that because it's about tipping the scale. But a lot of times, when dealing with our people, that's not. Let's say, for example, I can see individual families doing that, but we don't understand a lot of times the concepts of. You know what? This person has talent, and they can benefit us. And let me help this guy up and create a partnership, so then we can help each other out and keep that coming and going. Now let me ask you, one last thing. I know you got some things going, but one of the things that a lot of people have an issue with is, especially when they go to Africa. I'm an African American, and I really feel like the African American community or the Nigerian community, they treat the white people better than me. I just don't understand that. You hear those complaints a lot, and I've definitely seen that in Africa. And I know you said being very salient in understanding, but for some people, they may have a hard time with that. Like, I'm back in Africa trying to build with some of the brothers, but they don't see this. They don't see that I'm trying to respect them, but I don't see that this happening towards me. I see, maybe some whites getting better service than we're getting, and you complain about having bad service, but that white customer may come in and they may get a service better than you. You may have 10 times the amount of money. How would you educate the listeners on how to deal with something like that, and how to keep their focus despite something like that happening?
Woo. That is a tough one, because it is very real and it is hard to ignore. It is hard to ignore, but I think that it is more of an in-house thing. In other words, first of all, that particular guy, let's say you don't know him, he's giving you bad service. Well, ignore that guy, right? Fine. You're not gonna kind of have you hash it out with that guy, and you're not gonna transfer that experience to the next person. But what can be done practically, proactively, or shall we say positively? In other words, the action meaning of positive is goes to that whole dignity thing, cultural contributions thing again. Okay. Now, this sounds a little bit, because when you get to the psychological or cultural aspects of things, it's not as hard and fast, and it takes a lot more organizing and interacting and doing. In other words, leave that business that you got treated poorly at, but within the networks of people that let's say within those nodes of people that are good, right? And in those organizations that that, yes, these particular people bring value, you continue to cultivate the cultural exchange. Now, I don't want to just keep it in such a, kind of, airy-fairy kind of thing. What I'm trying to say is the cultural contributions of, let's say, the African Americans need to be respected. And then the, let's say, economic prowess of, let's say, the Igbo tribe needs to be emulated. In other words, the African Americans need to look at that scenario and say, hey, okay, cool. Let's say it's the Nigerians in America, right? Like, okay, fine. I'm not going to denigrate the immigrant mentality because whatever, they seem to love the white man, right? Fine. But they're taking advantage of opportunities that are here, okay? They're having certain kinds of outcomes. How can I emulate that? Okay, that's on that side. On the Nigerian side, it's, hey, the contributions on a cultural dimension, for example, that I tend to want to ignore, because of my inferiority complex, because all immigrants have an inferiority complex about why they're immigrants in the first place. Right? And I'm talking about immigrants into the West, right? So it doesn't even need to be kind of, look, you left a place looking for opportunity. That suggests that there's not opportunity in your place. It could always be thrown in your face any second now. Why don't you go back to Africa and make it better, right? So that thing makes certain kinds of people feel a certain kind of way. I'm saying both sides need to relax, okay? Hey, Mr. Nigeria, chill. Hey, Mr. Immigrant, just relax. Don't get all defensive about that and then use that defensive mode to kind of say, these people don't have a culture. That's bullshit. You know it. Actually understand and have that cultural exchange. And then on the other side, rather than say, oh, these immigrants are just taking advantage of this and they don't really care about our struggles, they don't come out to the marches with us, they just take advantage of the opportunities that we fought for, so on and so forth. Rather than do that, say, hey, what are they doing? How are they operating? What are these opportunities which are right here in front of me? They're not going into, the opportunities are not from heaven that these immigrants are taking advantage of, right? They're right there in your neighborhoods, right? So that kind of exchange is what I'm saying, right? So yes, you have to ignore in the instance by instance situation where you see someone doing some BS like that. But in places where you actually have interactions with people, this is where you then put away. And that's why I say it's more fuzzy, because it's a psychological thing you need to put away. On the one hand, your inferiority complex about being an immigrant that makes you then carry your big stick and whack everyone in the head with and say, I'm superior, right? And then on the other hand, rather than say, oh, these immigrants are just taking advantage, say, well, what exactly are you taking advantage of? And in this kind of communication, mutual respect, again, and trust will be built, along with the other thing that I mentioned earlier, which is a practical system of vetting high quality nodes in the network, so that I can go and patronize black businesses without having to worry about whether on the African side they're going to waste my time, or on the other side I'm going to get bad customer service, or there's going to be some, you get that, know the problems.
No, I mean, man, we might have to start a podcast one day, man, because you really understand, I mean, like brother Zach McQuesa, he's another guy that I don't know if you know. Did you ever see the interview I did with him? You know who this is, right? Zach McQuesa?
Yes.
Yeah. I did an interview with him on my channel. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't. I've done on Kinganda. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Kinganda. Very, very intelligent man. He only he was able to really talk about it on the same level as you, which both your engineers, which was interesting, and I really thank you for your contributing this knowledge to the community. And when you point out the fact that you are black in the group, other people look at you as the same as it is, whether you want to believe that you're not. That's how everyone, when you get pulled over by the police, they don't say, "Huh, Ugandan American pulled over." They're gonna say, "Black
Mm-hmm.
African American suspect." They're gonna
Mm-hmm.
look at you the same. So, and I'm glad in it because we're missing so many opportunities. We have so much talent in Black America, so much talent in the Caribbean, so much talent on the African continent, that we are all in these individual spaces. And to say everybody has to work together, but we need to have more traction to create more opportunities for ourselves, because the other groups are going to keep creating opportunities for themselves. And a lot of times that's happening in Black America. It's happening in Ghana. The Chinese are there.
And maybe next time around on this channel too, perhaps or wherever, we can talk about this particular thing in a big picture. In other words, we're talking about how to bridge a particular gulf, now the gulf between, let's say, Africans, we're using Nigerians, and the African Americans. But to the whole point of unity and operating as a united front, we need to understand, and again, this is a bias of mine, I'm an engineer, we need to understand that it's not going to come about as from the heart, in other words, right? I know we've been touching upon this, but I need to just kind of say it again. It's not a heart thing. And we're not going to, let's say, beat the Chinese by with a whole bunch of hotep stuff. You get what I'm saying, right? That's not how it actually works.
Right.
You can't be just a ragtag crew of islands that has a good feel and a good vibe for what the goal is. No, you have to actually have very strong objectives and very strong systems that hold people accountable and that you deploy in a unified way. It's not as crazy. Doesn't mean you don't have to be the Chinese Communist Party to do it, is what I'm saying. It's like you can do that stuff without having this very top-down powerful stuff. But the idea that it's going to come about by just, why don't we just come together? It's like, no, we have to come together as a system of nodes that have value to bring to the table, and that there is a whole art to building that thing. It's not a secret, right? It's not a secret. There is an art to it, and we simply need to follow systematically that thing, because that's the only way in which you can have an effect, the effect that we're trying to have as a diasporan community in the continent, for example.
I'll be looking forward to that. Maybe we'll catch up this week. I know you're going to Ethiopia tomorrow. And for those people who've heard you with the great pontification of today, if that's a real word, but talk to the people about why they will be interested in subscribing to your channel.
Oh, well, again, my channel really is about taking these kinds of things which we mentioned today. Let's say, for example, developing a node, right? Your business. How do you go ahead and take your particular skill, hard skill, right? Either blue collar or white collar. How do you take it from getting that particular skill to getting a job, and then starting a business, and then getting the soft skills that are required to expand, building the networks in the manners which we talked about, the different kinds of leverage I just talked about one, that seesaw leverage thing, right? And then also, how do you influence people by ordering yourself? What I mean by ruling yourself, by being the master of yourself. It's a big part of my channel, right? Because when you're the most comfortable person in the room, then you can make people relaxed. And when you can make people relaxed, then you can influence people. And this is how also you can focus on what is most salient, because you're out of your head and you're out of your feelings. Again, when you're out of your feelings and you're out of your head, you can focus on what is most salient. You can be the sane brain in the room. You can be the most influential person in the room also. And you can begin to develop that core competence that makes you a very powerful node in this network that we're trying to build. My channel focuses on all these kinds of things.
Well, brother, you should have 1 million subscribers, because you're very, very talented. You're very talented. I would say you're a very talented young man. I know I'm about the same age, but you're a very talented man. You're very, very intelligent. I think you make great contributions. And I'm gonna create a playlist called Tough Black Conversations. I've been meaning to start this playlist up where I want us to have realistic conversations that solve the problems of the Black world. And so your episode number 1, please go and subscribe to Brother Ike. The first come up into the top. Very successful brother, and very, very intelligent. A lot of people knew him from the super chats, but his real talent is in the knowledge. He's an excellent thinker. I think that we would do well to be more like him and looking at how to solve our problems in a more pragmatic and, as he would say, dogmatic way. Thank you for coming on. I know that you've been, enjoying yourself. So, guys, thank you for listening. Kinganda, as you know, keep it real. Kinganda forever. We're out.